But you kind of come into the picture when PC days.
Yes,
Oh,
I
okay.
was still in the active service. Sometime 1975, I became one of his staffs as deputy city or deputy of operations of the Constabulary. He was then our chief of Constabulary.
Tell me, ano yung reputasyon ni FBR noon? I mean, how did the junior officers like you see him? Did he have a reputation? Well, kung ano man.
Of course, even before we knew him to be a very likable man, because he was the captain of the special forces at the time. So I heard about him when I was also a junior officer at the time. But at close range, I see in him really an excellent leader who knows what he is doing. He leads by example, and as usual, as a leader, he takes care of his men and gives the necessary guidance on how the mission has to be accomplished.
Strict ba, sir?
He is strict, but I would say strict, but in a tempered way. If there are some mistakes, he would understand. And, as a staff officer, we commit mistakes in our communications and so on. And if you have so many mistakes, the paper will return to you with so many red inks, correction and so on. So the best is you see to it that you perfect your communications and see to it that there will be no more red ink corrections.
Sir, doon pa lang, sir, ano na? May legacy na yung,
Yeah.
yung red marker.
Yes, yes, yes. As a matter of fact, we were, where there were so many corrections, no? The logo of the PNP, Philippine National Police, was ordered by him to be designed. Okay? So there were several designs given to him. Then he liked one as a base design. You know, from that design, he corrected everything with all the corrections and all the red marks, red ink corrections. When it was finalized, then it was okay. But the original draft logo, with all the corrections he made, was placed in a frame and it was displayed as part of the memorabilia of the PNP.
Talaga?
Yeah. Of course, he continued this in Malacanang with all these red marks in the papers.
The marginal notes.
Marginal notes, you say.
Naalala ko yun, sir. Mas yun pa nga yung storya kaysa dun sa,
It was,
dun sa dokumento mismo.
it is, I think it is a good technique because it will be very fast to do it. You don't have to repeat the main idea. All you have to do is what he did, was to look at that idea, and if that idea has to be implemented, then he he wrote all the necessary instructions to us.
Oh. What? Apparently, he was a very detailed person and very passionate about his work.
Yes, yes.
How did that affect the staff, the PC C1, 2, C3, C4, C. Paano kayo naapektuhan nun? At medyo masinop yung boss.
Of course, we realized that he was meticulous that time, from the time on. And so we tried to, naturally, as subordinates, we tried ourselves to come up to his standards. And we coordinate also with each other. And so that's why we work as a team under him.
Okay. 70s yun, ano, sir? That was about the time na-organize, ano? Kaka-organize pa lang ng Philippine Constabulary, is that right? As
no.
a separate unit in the AFP.
No. The Philippine Constabulary has been a unit of the armed forces.
Noon.
But then they thought during those days that it would be better if the local police forces be integrated as a national police. So that started the Integrated National Police, INP muna. Then later on, in a law, it became a civilian force which we call Philippine National Police. And that's where there was a breakup. People from the constabulary who would like to stay with police work went to the PNP and became, shall we say, civilian in character.
Yeah.
And then I myself, since I was already at the peak of my career and about to retire, I stayed with JHQ as the deputy chief of staff of the armed forces.
Okay. 70s. Pero parang hiwalay talaga yung pagtingin sa constabulary. Did FVR keep it that way? He wanted the constabulary to be seen as a different organization, although part of the AFP at that time.
Well, it was martial law at the time.
Yeah.
And so I think it was really good that the constabulary will always be with the military. But we need also the civilian component for police work. And so the INP was created, but attached or more or less merged with the constabulary. So it is PCINP. So on one side, he was chief of the constabulary, and on the other side, chief of the PNP or Director General of the PNP.
Okay. 70s went through. It's now the 80s. There was a lot of, if you remember, the protest movement was gaining ground. In 83, you were posted and you were already C3, head of operations. Ikaw na yung ikaw na yung head ng
I became C3 after coming from the provincial command.
Yes.
I was sent to the field first in the Bicol region. Of course, when I was a junior officer, I was also sent to the field as usual. But as provincial commander, I was in Camarines Sur. Then I returned, that was about 1986.
86 na.
86, I was designated as the C3 or Director for Operations.
Okay. What was, nababasa mo ba yung mind ni FBR at the time? I mean, there was a lot of political protests happening already. Former Senator Aquino was assassinated. The protests were becoming more regular. Ano yung basa mo kay FBR nun?
Well, I would say he remained very professional. Of course, it was martial law. There were protests. He saw to it that the rights of the people are not suppressed. Okay? And so there were opposition politicians at the time who came to him, asked audience, and so on. So he gave them advice and so on, and therefore he did not use his power as Chief Constabulary and Chief PNP to suppress the rights of people.
Hindi ba, sir? What about, if you remember, it was a toss-up between him and Fabian Ver for AFP Chief of Staff. Eventually, si Fabian Ver was appointed by President Marcos at the time, and FBR was Vice Chief of Staff. Wala ka bang nakitang parang nagtampo or he resented being passed over or in favor of Fabian Ver?
Of course, I noticed such some sort of frustration. I think it's just human. But he did not show it as much as it should be, but instead cooperated and performed his duties as Vice Chief of Staff and Chief of Constabulary, DG Philippine National Police.
There were calls for him as well to resign, umalis na siya sa gobyerno ni Marcos. I mean, if you remember, Senator Shahani, or then Ambassador Shahani, his sister, diba, came out and said she was withdrawing her support and all, and they were asking him to do the same thing, but he didn't. He stayed on. Why do you think he?
Probably in his mind, it's only my opinion, Probably in his mind, it is the timing that will count, And also, he might have some such persuasion, but keep it to himself, and he looks at the situation, and that is where he will step out when it's needed. That's the way I analyze it.
And he did.
He did. That's my opinion.
And he did that, February 22,
Yes.
And what we now call the People Power
Revolution. Yeah.
Did you expect him to do that? Break away from Marcos, withdraw his support? Ito na yung sinasabi mong timing,
I really did not expect that it will happen that way right away. Because as a matter of fact, we of Class 61, PMA Class 61, we went to Baguio for a alumni homecoming. And then we just heard the news about it. And so
Nasa ano kayo, sir? Nasa
We were in
kayo
Baguio
nun?
City at the
Oh,
time.
okay.
When there was such a call for people power, we learned about the breakup and we learned about announcement of Cardinal Sin.
Oh.
So we returned and then reported to his office, and we reported also to our respective positions as C3 and
Oh.
operations.
Oh.
It so happened that I have young men there
Aha.
who were members of the so-called reform, the armed forces movement,
RAM.
RAM. And as I said, these are just movements. To us, it's a movement for reform. It's all right. Who does not like reform? So it's tolerated, not it's a peaceful movement. So it's all right for them to be members of the RAM.
Okay. Okay. But you joined FBR.
Oh yes, yeah.
Why? Why did you support him? Why did you Why did you join him?
Let us say it is for me. It would be really a natural reaction of a subordinate to his immediate commander. He was my immediate commander. Of course, there is a commander-in-chief, but he is far, far up. I have to follow first the chain of command, and my immediate commander is FVR.
Pero
So-
humiwalay siya eh. He broke away from the chain of command. Ganun siya.
Yun nga, so there is some confusion, no?
Yeah.
So, confusion. Depending the Constitution, and then here comes the military chain of command. But you also have the Constitution, breaking away from the civilian government really is against the Constitution from the technical and legal point of view. But there is also a philosophical point of view, which I wrote in my book, The People Power, an Inside the Story, wherein I justified the so-called the contract of government with the people.
Okay.
In other words, the government exists for the people. And if the people do not like the government anymore, then it's time for the people to rise up and rebel. That's why revolution is legal. If it has really that good intentions to topple down a power that is suppressing them.
And that's what happened.
That's my point of view. That's why, aside from my reaction to be a good subordinate to my immediate commander, that was also my philosophical justification why I have to, because
Okay.
on the first instance, we are a little bit confused, but we have to find reasons why we are doing this.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I did it as an immediate subordinate, loyal to a commander. But I did it also from the ideal situation of being with the people vis-a-vis a government that they would like to change.
That time, just a small group. I mean, against the
Yeah.
organized, entrenched power of
Yes,
Mr.
yeah.
Marcos and General Ver. Hindi ba kayo was there any worry on your part that you might not come out of it alive?
Yes, there was such a worry, naturally, that since we have few forces with us, manpower, so naturally we could be overwhelmed.
Yep. Yep.
So that was a good solution on the part of Cardinal Sin to call on people to surround Camp Crame. That's why then Minister Enrile has to join FBR going to Camp Crame, and we consolidated there in Camp Crame. And on my part, my role was to call up each and every commander of the Constabulary and of the PNP. We even reached out to battalion commanders of the military,
Talaga, sir.
especially those that we know. Of course, I had classmates in the different branches of government. Of course, there were also military officers of the different branches of government, different branches of the armed forces,
Armed forces.
that went to the side of FVR and the Minister Enrile. So they also called up all their counterparts in the field.
So nasa ano kayo? Communications nasa communications line kayo.
Really, to coordinate everything.
Ano yun? What was it? Join us or stay put na lang dyan kung hindi nyo...
You know, is the situation is simple enough. It can be done because the order is not very hard to implement. The guidance to me is tell all our commanders in the field, stay put in that area. Maintain peace and order there. Because, of course, we still have a problem of the insurgents and so on. Keep order there and stay put and follow the chain of command. Naturally, the chain of command is from that subordinate going up to him. So, if everybody follows that, then we have the whole forces with us. Okay? Because the order is follow the chain of command. So we have to begin with the regional commanders, provincial commanders, and they also did it to their own people. So there was order on the ground outside Metro Manila, and it was only in Metro Manila where there were so much movements of troops. And then as we go on, we have amassed more forces to our side.
Diba? Expressions of support, diba?
Yes.
Pero ano rin, ano? So how crucial was FBR's role, no? In EDSA, no?
Very crucial because
Kung hindi siya sumama, ano yun?
because he was already liked by everyone as a commander. Before EDSA, he was visiting, because during those days there was this so-called unified command, where the military, the PNP are all coordinated. When he visited the constabulary units and the PNP units, he saw to it that all the commanders there of the other branches of government, of the armed forces, were also visited and attended to by him as a commander. Because it so happened that he was then concurrently the vice chief of staff. So
they recognized him. There was a lot of respect, or.
But of course, you cannot avoid that there are some people who are really very loyal to the powers that be at the time. So be it, the majority anyway. They became minority and the majority is for FBR.
Yeah, FVR, and then yeah, the Minister Enrile
Yeah.
there, and it was successful.
Yeah.
Diba?
Of course, we have to give credit also to the RAM in the sense that they have their own movement.
Yeah.
So through their line of communication, they communicate with their own classmates and other classmen who joined their movement before.
So EDSA was successful. FVR became Chief of Staff.
Yes,
One of the first orders of Mrs. Aquino was to
install him.
to install him as Chief of Staff. And you became Capcom, NCRDC.
I At that time I was still the C3 or Deputy for Operations of the Constabulary, but right away I was taken in by him as acting J3 or in the armed forces, the
Operations
chief of
Chief.
staff for deputy chief of staff for operations, something like that.
Right, right. That was also the time when, if you remember, 7 coups.
Yes, different code data and so on.
And you were together.
We went through all those things.
What kind of a commander was FVR? And then especially that you have to fight your own fellow soldiers.
Well, as a commander, he is cool-headed and gets recommendations from his people as to the course of actions to be done. Then from there, he makes the decision, and that is the one implemented. He knows that there will be skirmishes, but as much as possible, the role of the forces is to surround them and to convince them to just go with us because it's useless. Of course, there were, shall we say, very aggressive coup d'etat soldiers and officers. Of course, they did not listen to that. But others were just persuaded.
Okay. So as much as possible, contain,
Containment, yeah.
no shooting against each other.
Yes, yes.
Convince them to, but at least
But on the other side also, they saw to it that they do not just fire at the soldiers.
kapwa nila
Yeah.
sundalin.
Yes, yes. I have to credit to the rebels or the leaders of the coup d'etat that they do not also just fire at us, no? Except in actual skirmishes. So of course you saw the burning of
GHQ.
GSQ, some burning but partially in Camp Rami and so on. Well, anyway, they are buildings. And I think there were very few casualties. There is maybe people, because anyway, they were given a chance to get out and so on. So the camaraderie, while there was some sort of military confrontation between the forces, the camaraderie is still there, and as soon as possible, we do not want to hurt each other.
Oo nga, no? Avoid as much as possible. There were 2 really major ones, 87 and then 89.
Yes.
Doon talaga nagkaroon ng a number of deaths.
Yeah. In the 89, especially in 89, well, 87 is also worse. But 89, there was the occupation of Makati.
Oh.
They took advantage of the people in Makati, so they occupied the hotels, the high-rise buildings where are really inhabited by either residents or offices, embassies, and so on. And we have to be very careful because we don't like to have collateral damage vis-a-vis the civilians.
Right.
No? So, like the Intercontinental Hotel at that time, that was occupied. We have our forces there around.
Yep.
But what can you do? But you cannot just
Attack.
fire salvos and attack there. So what we did was more on negotiation. And then Undersecretary yet of Tourism coordinated with me, and he made himself available to bring out the civilians from there and to calm down everybody and so on and so forth. And being also a civilian official, he was not confronted or touched by the rebels, the rebel soldiers.
Yeah.
So, my former boss, Secretary Alunan, did a good job at the time there.
Yeah. He negotiated the release of the
Yes.
civilians, and then eventually
Yes.
returned to barracks.
Yes. And to really negotiate with those people who are mostly army men, we need somebody whom they respect. And so, the former chief of staff, he was not chief of staff then, but superintendent of the Philippine Military Academy, he was brought in to negotiate with the soldiers under instruction of General De Villa and then Defense Secretary Ramos at the time, to really engage these people in negotiation until they were persuaded to go back to barracks.
Sino yung superintendent ng PMA?
General Enrile, Arturo Enrile. A good soldier and officer.
Yeah. Eventually became secretary also.
Became chief of staff, and then later on, when retired, he was taken as the secretary of communications.
DOTC.
DOTC, yeah.
So that was settled. That was the last coup attempt,
Yeah.
at least that happened. And then you retired na. Kailan ka ba nagretiro?
I retired 1991.
91.
Sometime October of 1991.
That was about the time that FVR was already, he was Secretary of National Defense, and ideally, yun na dapat yung pinnacle, ng service mo. But apparently, he wasn't just looking at Secretary of National Defense. Kailan mo napansin na parang hindi lang ito yung gusto niyang maabot? Meron pa siyang gustong abutin na mas mataas.
Well, when was that? Well, I realized that he is really ripe for to aim for the presidency. President Cory's term is about to end, and there were meetings about who should be the candidate, and then of course, I think he was then the most popular government official at the time, aside from Cory, President Cory.
Did you ever imagine na he would do that? That he would run for president, or that he would? I mean, you were under him for quite a while already by that time, no?
Yeah, but I have not realized that until when he was defense secretary, and there was a need to succeed Cory at the time, naturally.
Yeah.
Being the most popular government official at the time, I sense that he should be the one to be a candidate. for
May
that.
mga indications ka bang nakita na may ginagawa na siya to, get to that goal?
This I could say, it came back to my mind that ever since in the military service and as officer of the Constabulary or head of the Constabulary, he was really very, very mobile in going throughout the country and inspecting the troops and inspecting almost every provincial command. So it came to my hindsight that could have been the beginning of his preparation that we do not know, no? But he continued it up to the time that he was defense secretary, and then there was then the need at the moment for somebody to succeed President Cory, the most popular is him. So then, there were some actions that I noticed, which contacting people who could be his, shall we say, supporters in the in running for presidency.
Kailan mo na
Although,
napansin yun?
yeah, it's a period of time which is, as I said, between the time na he was defense secretary already and the time that President Cory's term is about to end, something like that.
You retired, and then did you stay connected? Tumulong ka ba? Tumulong ka ba sa kampanya niya?
It so happened that I ran also for I ran for senator.
Yeah.
But it so happened that we are on the opposite side.
Saan partido ka ba nun, sir?
I was with the NPC
National.
under Danding Kuwangko.
Yeah.
So,
Naghiwalay kayo ng landas, sir.
yes. But he tried to have me contacted. But since I'm committed to the other side already, I do not like also to just turn my back. Anyway, I'm not fighting him as president. I am just one of the senatorial candidates. And I do not campaign against him. I only campaign for issues. So therefore, I would not hurt him.
Yeah.
So he tried to contact me through his aides. I am sorry to tell that I really did not report to him. Because if I report to him, at the time, should I have reported to him at the time? I could easily be persuaded. So, it's better not to see him.
Ganun bang kalakas yung powers of persuasion niya?
For me, that would be very, very strong.
Or malalim din talaga kasi yung samahan ninyo?
Oo. We have been from 1975 as a junior staff, went up through staff, provincial and so on, up 75 to 86.
Matagal na.
I'm sure I will go with him. But since I was committed already to the other side, I don't like also to, shall we say, be bad-looking to the other side.
Palabra.
So, anyway, my thinking was, anyway, I will not hurt him. I campaign about issues only. I do not attack. I do not do some criticism on people. And so, therefore, it would not harm him. So, it's all right now. I'm just a plain neutral senator, only with the other party.
He won. He became president in 92. And there's a ban, di ba? There's a ban on. How did you meet again? Kailan kayo nagkita ulit?
Yes, there was a ban. I'm not supposed to be a ban to be appointed. For candidates to be appointed to a position within 1 year from that election.
So, pahinga ka muna nun?
Yes, I relaxed for a while, but then he created he would like to reform the PNP. So, he created a committee, an ad hoc committee, and got his officers, including Secretary Alonan, because the PNP is under Secretary Alonan. He created a committee with Secretary Alonan, Secretary De Villa, some key officers who are close to him, to FVR, and he included me from outside. He said, Alex, bumalik ka dito, sabi ni General De Villa. Bumalik ka dito, sumama ka sa aming committee. So I have to go. At the time, I was already organizing my own law office at the time. So he told me, you come. So we had an ad hoc committee and did some recommendations to him. And as a matter of fact, when we have submitted our recommendations, he told me in a corner, Alex, I'm thinking that you should be the chief of the PNP. Yeah. Then I remember the law itself because I've been part of the crafting of the law before. That only the provision of the law is that only an active police officer can be appointed as chief of the Philippine National Police. So I said, sir, we will be going against the provision. There is this provision of prohibition against me. I'm retired already. So I told him about that. Is that so? So you report to Secretary Alonan. You would be the undersecretary there. So that's first. So I followed him.
Ganun na lang. Hindi ka na tinanong kung gusto mo doon or...
Hindi na ako tinanong. Siya ang nag-isip na maybe I would be right there because the ILG
Yeah,
is
yeah.
more on local government and law enforcement. And in the provincial command level, we are in touch always with the mayors and the provincial governors and so
Local
on.
execs, yeah.
And then constabulary work is actually police work. Only that we are with the military branch of service, a military branch of service. So he thought of that.
So, tapos na yung 1-year ban.
Yeah.
Tapos na yung 1-year ban at that
Oh
time.
yeah, after that. As a matter of fact, I remember he made a very good announcement of my position. There was some sort of a celebration, I think, of the PNP and at the time, and in that conference, he was announcing appointments, and he said, "I would like to inform you that I am appointing Alex Aguirre to be the Undersecretary of the ILG." So, yeah, my morale was lifted up being announced
Oh, public
publicly.
Oh, by the, okay. But let me ask you about, not just about your appointment, but quite a few other appointments made by FVR during his presidency, and it involved people similar to you, former military officers, former constabulary officers who retired, and he would appoint these retired officers to government civilian positions. And he was he was criticized for that.
Yeah, he was criticized for that.
Your
But actually, there were only few positions for the military. But of course, the defense secretary is the Secretary de Villa, military. And I was with the DILG, then later on PMS. Who else? Of course, the former chief of staff after retirement, Secretary Arturo and really, yeah. Otherwise, all others were really professionals in their own field. The NEDA, Mr. Habito was there.
But
The budget, I think, the Secretary of Finance,
yeah,
Bobby Ocampo.
not exactly the line agencies, but some the bureaus, and then yung undersecretaries, assistant secretaries. How do you react to that FDR militarized the bureaucracy?
I don't think so that he militarized because there were few appointments, really principally mostly civilian secretaries, majority, maybe only about 2 or 3 are military men, and bureau heads are also non-military, except for a few. Of course, there was another military man that was taken in, but he had his experience as a real builder of the highway, of the NLEX. The NLEX now is
Secretary Villar.
Secretary Villar of the Public Works.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Engineer naman din yun.
Engineer siya, and well, I would say he did good in the Department of Public Works.
You were also assigned, sa iyo rin pinatutok yung di ba? Yung peace
The peace
negotiations
process.
with the MNLF.
Yes. During in the GRP or Government of the Republic of the Philippines, GRP, and MNLF peace process.
Ikaw yung...
I was one of
Yeah.
the committee members.
Yeah.
Our real head was then
Ambassador
presidential advisor for the peace process, General Manuel Yan. But he had also good experience in diplomacy because he was formerly the Undersecretary of Foreign Affairs. And so, more or less, I held committees that are very primordial to the whole negotiation. Committee on implementing the agreement. I also those matters that are operational, ceasefire, but more on crafting what the agreement should be. How this thing should be organized. Even
ano yung guidance ni FVR doon?
Of course, his guidance is general. To have peace as much possible, let us have peace with the rebels because we would like to see peace and development in Mindanao. So that's the main objective. So, the best proposal that we can think about to solve the problem, of course, the other side, the MNLF, has proposals. We have proposals, and we have to negotiate in such a way that we will have a meeting point. And then from time to time, we give feedback to the President, and it is communicated through our chairman of the GRP panel, Secretary Ambassador Yan.
Ano yung major challenges? I remember covering it so ano yung major challenges sa inyo? Your view.
The major challenge there is, first, would this document that we'll be agreeing on be within the constitutional provisions? On the side of the MNLF, they would not like to recognize the Constitution, you see, because we are beginning anew. We should not be tied up by your Constitution. That's what they say. Naturally, on our side, we are bound by the Constitution because this has to be approved by Congress and so on, and the constitutionality naturally will be challenged. So, crafting that is very important, the wordings. And we were assisted, by the way, by then Assistant Secretary the former Chief Justice na just after Sereno, the one who took over after Sereno.
Carpio?
No.
O acting?
No,
De Castro?
the lady.
De Castro.
Yes, Teresita de Castro.
Yeah, De Castro.
He was the Assistant Secretary. Because we are composite team coming from different departments.
Yes.
So, she represented the Department of Justice. And I represent, of course, the Office of the President and the military side, the ILJ, and so on, PMS. So, we were the ones crafting with the assistance of, we have to give due credit to this man. I'm sorry, sometimes I really forget
It's okay.
names.
It's okay.
He was also formerly the head of the PMS during the time of Gloria Arroyo. We used to be together. That fellow from Baguio, who used to be also a public relation officer or public affairs officer of then Secretary Enrile. Anyway,
Yeah.
he joined us in crafting because he is a good writer. So you have a good writer, then you have the perspective of the legal mind. Of course, I was already a lawyer then also. So we joined together, the three of us,
Yeah.
crafting the document itself.
How difficult was Noor how difficult was it to negotiate with Noor Miswari?
I would say that sometimes he was difficult to negotiate with because he has some tantrums, etc. And then he will say, "Oh no, we do not like that," and then let's postpone this and so on. But he is a man that can be persuaded.
Talaga. May interventions ba si FVR during that period na when Noor was being difficult?
Well, in a way, but not exactly right there in the negotiation table.
Yeah.
As a backgrounder, you will note that we started the peace process with Noor Miswari a long time ago, no? Under President Marcos, the so-called Libya Agreement, which was later on scattered because, according to Miswari, there was violation in the implementation. It is supposed to be one whole autonomous region or one whole region. But what President Marcos did then was to separate the two. I think, on the hindsight, it was a good move on the part of President Marcos at the time. Because you have the western side, is more of the Tausog, the islands there. And then you have the eastern side or central Mindanao, is more about the present MNLF area now. So at that time, it was a good decision. But of course now, bringing them all together, when we finally crafted the ARMM, that was a good move to have one. Good one.
Was there a point where muntik nang tumigil, mag-stop? When, both panels were, let's not push through with this. Almost, when it almost failed. And how did FVR step in and, how did he bring it all back together?
Yeah, I think there was a disagreement as to disarmament, how arms will have to be treated because they are supposed to be peaceful and be joining the political community, so there is no need for firearms. And then how the MNLF will ascend to power and so on. So those are the contentious issues. And so then of course there were oppositions from the Mindanao side as to whether should we include Davao, should we include Zamboanga City, and so on. So our own political leaders are also at our backs when we return and tell them they will convince us that we are not included there.
Yeah. Yeah.
We are not in Muslim Mindanao.
Mhm.
So, like that.
Paano na?
But,
How was that resolved?
with respect to the armaments, we skip muna specifics about that. Will be resolved later, which we tried to resolve. And so after the agreement, it was resolved in such a manner that we do not right away disarm them, because they're saying that if you disarm us, we also have enemies there around, and we will be, shall we say, powerless. So they were allowed to keep the firearms. But we saw to it that the firearms were registered so that there will be no illegal possession of firearms.
Documented siya.
And then, of course, we also agreed that since this is peace process and these rebels are also soldiers, so we allowed integration into the armed forces. And many of them made good also.
Yeah.
So we integrated them. Their commanders became their commanders there. So we made some structure that there is transition. And on the political side, in order that Ms. Wari can ascend to power right away, we created what you call, it's controversial because our local politician would not like that.
Yeah.
We created an area, we call it Zone of Peace and Development, ZOPAD. And then, to govern it, we put up what you call SPCD, Southern SP, Southern Philippines, CDs. The D there is development. So, is
Southern SPCPD.
SPCPD, yeah.
Council for Peace and Development.
Yes, SCPD, Southern Council for Peace and Development. So it's only a council. So it is half-bred, semi-powerful insofar as economic and peace and development are concerned. But really, it has no political power.
But it allowed...
it is some sort of a transition when there shall be election in the ARMM.
Pinatakbo ninyo si Nur.
So,
he became governor
he became governor. Since the agreement is for him to be governor, so the problem is, how could it be done? He cannot be appointed because the officials of the ARMM are supposed to be elected.
Right.
But how can you be sure that he will be elected?
But I remember because considerable effort was done to support and to help Noor and his leaders in the MNLF to get elected to ARMM.
That is where the president's persuasion came in, political persuasion came in. He was not appointed, he was elected, but it so happened that he has no opposition, opposing candidate. So, ultimately, he was elected.
Ano yung kinausap ni FVR, wag na kayong magpatakbo?
Let us say, he must have persuaded some politicians to give peace a chance. They always saying, give peace a chance. So therefore, this may be unorthodox, but it is a way, a peaceful way of giving peace a chance. So persuade these people, hold for a while, give peace a chance, and let them govern themselves. So Norby Suarez became governor, and Congress was very cooperative. Every time there will be elections there, the election is postponed. So he continues to be governor. And so there was a time that it was time not to be postponed because it's 3 terms. 3 terms na. So, naturally, he has to run with opponents. And he was defeated.
Is there any rancor or nangihinayan ka dahil, I mean, there was so much hope and optimism placed on Noor and the MNLF to develop the ARMM, but it was really, you take a look at it, it was really a story of squandering away the peace dividend.
Yes.
Nanghinaya ka ba?
Nanghinayang tayo, siyempre. Because it so happened that as PMS head, I was tasked to oversee the implementation, to coordinate everything from the level of the president. And the cabinet members are also supporting him with economic funds and so on. But you know, with your respect to Norby Suarez, he is a good rebel leader, I would say.
Good warrior.
Good warrior, I would say. Because he was able to make a movement, an armed movement that would matter. So that means that requires leadership. So we owe that to him. But so happened that a rebel leader may not necessarily be a good governor on the political scene. So that was a failure on his part.
Poor civil administrator.
Yes. And so it just so happened also that there were rips within the ranks, key commanders, and so on.
Failed experiment ba? Was it a failed experiment in...
On the specific side, meaning on that particular side, it is a failed experiment. But on the strategic side, in the long run, that is the opening for everything. Because as we try to implement the GRP MNLF peace process, we are also already negotiating with the MILF.
And that's what happened
We started.
recently, Oo nga.
We did the negotiation with the MILF. And there was a key man there that was assigned. I think General Soriano, who was also appointed as chief of the irrigation NIA authority. So it was right for him because he has to build irrigation for the development of the area and so on. So it would favor the peace process with the MILF.
The last 2 years of the presidency, not too much of a let up there, ano? Tuloy-tuloy pa rin yung
Yes.
in work.
Yeah.
Wait, let me ask you. You remember that incident when he had his emergency medical?
Yeah.
Magkasama
That
ba
is
kayo nun?
the.
Oo.
I was only informed.
Okay, okay.
So a core group of cabinet members, you call it security cluster,
Mm.
were called, headed by Divilla and of course the Secretary of Foreign Affairs, and of course the Executive Secretary and myself. We were told the President is under the knife now. We must see to it that everything is normal.
Mhm.
And so we saw to it that until after the operation is finished, there was a news blackout on that. There was a news blackout. And it was successful. Then, little by little, it was made known. And so, the country was normal, even the president was there.
Was there any worry na baka
Of course, for us, human beings, you worry that something might go wrong in the operation, but the president saw to it that he was really an expert who did it, and it was done very beautifully, beautifully.
Oh wait, you wanted to talk about how he divided the time in his
Yeah, he has
presidency?
a general plan of how he would run the country. In the first 2 years, he said, this is the time for political stability and security and people empowerment.
Okay.
Yung very good quotation from him, people empowerment. So there should be security among the people. There must be political stability and of course economic reforms so that there will be peace and development. So yun. With that, the next 2 years should be about social reforms. Of course, we continue what is being done before that, which is economic and security, then more of social reforms. And then the last 2 years, he said that in that social reform includes some judicial reforms, something like that, some structural reforms. As a matter of fact, he has been counting the number of legislative bills that were passed, recommended by him, that were passed by Congress. He counted. He used to count that. And then, that's part of political reforms, using the instrument of our democratic government to have reforms through Congress. And then the last one is sustaining the gains that we have built up through the years. Sustain it so that it could be continued to the next presidency. Because he knows limited only to 6. And then, therefore, during the transition period between his administration and the incoming Arab administration, he saw to it that we organized transition teams in each department, preparing all documentation of what are the plans of that department,
Mm.
what are the ongoing projects, so that money for those projects will not go to waste, so that it could be continued, because these are good projects and all these things. Place them in documents. They were documented, each department. And,
You're talking about the transition already.
yeah,
Executive Secretary ka na. Ikaw na rin yung
Ay.
chief ng PMS.
yeah, I was the chief of the PMS and also later on, executive secretary in the last 6 months. And I'm on top of the situation because he considered the head of the PMS as also his chief of staff. And at the same time, during those days, he considered the head of the PMS as also the cabinet secretary. Yeah, concurrent. So, we are on top of the situation under his guidance, and then we prepared documents for proper transition. So, we used to brief before they took over. We used to brief the would-be cabinet members of President Era. So we did that, and in before the June 12, I think is June 12. There was this.
We had the centennial.
There was the centennial, of
100
course.
years.
Oo, 1998. Then June 12 is our Independence Day. To my recollection, President-elect Erap was invited together with his would-be cabinet members, some of them, to Cavite for the flag raising in the Aguinaldo Shrine there. And we give briefing also. He himself gave briefings to President-elect Erap. So that
Nakatulong.
everything is a good transition. Really.
Nakatulong naman, sir.
I think so. Yes, yes.
Did he have enough time? Because if you remember, there was also this attempt, diba, to amend the Constitution. Yung pirma tsaka yung People's Initiative. Because, diba? Were you involved in that?
Anyway, I was involved, but on the more on the monitoring side.
Okay. Okay.
In other words, I was not told to campaign for or against, etc. I was more on the monitoring side,
I said
and
here.
seeing to it what will be the result. So, what he did, so there was this initiative by a group of people, and it is gaining momentum. Gaining momentum. But of course, there were oppositions
Yeah.
to that, no? And so, ultimately, the president decided that let there be consultations, people's assembly in different areas, and then what would be the consensus in that in these different areas, especially in contentious areas where there were opposition, and gather them all. Whatever is the will of the majority in these consultations will be followed. It so happened that when the reports came in to our monitoring office, the majority is for non-extension.
Yeah.
And the president followed that, abided with that decision.
Ano yung basa mo sa his own, ano? How did you read his mind at that time? What was your impression?
My impression is he he would like to maintain the support of the people. Therefore, he would not like to force it. Personally, I would say he may like really to continue because he has many things yet in mind to do. But then, if he will do that, he must have the support of the people. So he saw to it that there was democratic consultations. That's how I see it.
And he eventually decided, wag na, no?
I mean, as far as I'm concerned, I have not given any advice. I just presented this is the result. So it is decision not to push through.
Okay. Okay. Estrada. Nanghihinayang ka ba na nahati yung lakas at the time? Because you had JDV, Jose de Venecia, if you remember, Secretary De Villa, and then even Governor Osmeña. No? Naghiwa-hiwalay. Nanalo tuloy si I mean, aside from being very popular, Estrada benefited when diba, there were just too many people who wanted
You see,
to succeed FVR.
of course, my position is more or less political in the sense that we are with the cabinet, with the president, and so on. But after the election of the senatorial election, since I was defeated in that election, although I was just 3 slots from the last,
Oh.
despite lack of resources. So I lost there. I told myself that since I was taken in again in the government by FBR, I stayed apolitical. I stayed apolitical.
Hindi ka na nakialam.
Hindi ako nakikialam on the political side. So there were opposition, opposite party to that of the administration, vis-a-vis the administration. They are all welcome in our office in the DILG and there in my office. We attend to them and help them if there is a need for their constituency. So I just remained apolitical.
Okay. Okay. His term ended June 1998. How have you stayed connected over the years?
Over the years, with the president,
May mga reunion ba kayo?
yes, from time to time. I think this Ramos and Peace Development is a vehicle for such reunion because from time to time he will sponsor certain seminar, conferences. The cabinet members will be there, or even the undersecretaries, and so on. Of course, during usual birthday celebration, New Year's, Christmas. So we go to his place in the in Muntinlupa, city, in Alabang, I would say to be particular, or in any other place where we can have a group.
What are ano na pagkukwentuhan ninyo pagka nagkikita-kita kayo ng ganyan?
I would say more on the social aspects, mostly on the social aspects, but at the same time, there are serious matters
Mm.
that he takes up, which are usually contained, or where they have been contained now in what you call the Bulletin of Sermons, etc. And serious matters like about statesmanship, leading the nation, the best practices of running a government. Those are his topics. Diplomacy. That's why from time to time he goes to an international conference representing the Philippines. So those are the serious matters. More on trying to give a legacy to the younger government leaders of how to run the nation. And it's good. They are in writing, and it could be read by the younger generation. And so he saw to it that his books, or our books, I have 2 books that were written, were sent out to libraries all over the country. But most of his books or write-ups, papers, were sent out to libraries.
That you mentioned the word legacy. So what, looking back at everything that he was able to do, what he did during his term as president, what stands out as his most significant achievement, or what could be his greatest legacy?
I would say that I would call it his presidency was run like a professional management of the affairs of government. Meaning to say, it's not too political. It's more on what should be the proper management of government, of proper governance. So that's what I think. Of course, that is the general umbrella, which is professional way of governance. Because he follows certain rules, like the so-called CSW, or completed staff action. You coordinate first with the secretaries. So there is coordination on certain projects to be done, or certain programs to be done. So, and the legal implication of, in other words, CSW is just, and so far as cabinet members are concerned, they are staffs of the commander-in-chief. And like in the military, we make researches, coordination. We study and analyze the implications of these particular recommendations that we will make. So if it is coordinated on with other departments, and then research as to legality and the political implication having been inputted therein, and so on, the social and economic implications. So now you have a complete package of recommendations that you can give him. It is called completed staff action. In the military, we call that way because it is so studied well that there is nothing that the commander will do but to approve or disapprove. If the recommendation, although properly studied, is not jive with his thinking, and he is on the higher level, he might have seen things that are not supposed to be done.
Yeah.
that we did not see the staffs, he will disapprove it. But everything has been done and it is in accordance with his guidance, approved. And that's what he used to do. So it is all coordinated and well studied when we do things
Yeah, that's how
under him.
And that's how he ran his...
Yeah, that's why I called it, on the umbrella, I describe it as a professional way of governance or doing the management of the affairs of the government.
Thank you very much for your time. Maraming salamat.